Have you ever felt like a leaf caught in a storm, tossed by every gust of wind, every unexpected downpour? We spend so much of our lives reacting to bad news, to other people's moods, to frustrating traffic, to the relentless demands of the world. We chase external validation, external peace, external happiness, and what's left? A constant state of anxiety, a feeling of powerlessness, an endless cycle of striving for things just beyond our grasp. Now imagine if you could stand firm amidst that storm, not by fighting the wind, but by understanding that the wind cannot touch your core. Imagine if you could choose your response, not just react. What do you think would happen? That's where the profound truth lies. When you stop trying to control everything outside of you, the opinions of others, the unpredictable events of life, even your own initial emotional impulses, the world around you, paradoxically, begins to align. Because you reclaim the only true territory you possess, your inner self. People are used to seeing you swayed, predictable, easily provoked. But the day you choose to anchor yourself, the game changes. And those who thought they knew you realize they knew only the external, reactive version of you. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, famously said, "Some things are within our control, and some things are not." Now think about this. When you get upset, when you feel drained, who truly holds the power? Who is dictating your emotional state? This reveals more about what you believe you can control than about the actual situation, and it mainly reveals how much you are still being pulled by external forces without realizing it. You keep giving your peace away, chasing approval, trying to fix things that aren't yours to fix, or clinging to outcomes that are beyond your influence. And with every forced effort, every anxious rumination, every desperate attempt to manipulate external circumstances, you give away a piece of your vital energy. And at the end of the day, what's left? Exhaustion, disappointment, and emptiness you can't explain. But I'll tell you why, because you are too focused on what is not in your power, neglecting the immense power you truly possess. This video isn't about becoming passive, it's about becoming sovereign. It's about learning what Marcus Aurelius called cultivating your inner citadel, a fortress of peace and reason that no external force can breach. This process begins when you understand that true strength is not in controlling the world, but in mastering your response to it. So I ask you now, looking into your eyes, how long will you continue to be controlled by the whims of fate or the opinions of others? How long will you react like a puppet every time life pulls a string? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to withdraw your focus from the uncontrollable and to become unshakable. Because when you master what you control, everything changes. You have been taught to chase, to acquire, to accumulate, to believe that your worth lies in your achievements, your possessions, or how well you manage external events. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. This outward focus is not a path to freedom. It is a subtle form of enslavement. And as long as you continue to think that you need to manipulate the world to find peace, you will be manipulated, drained, and forgotten as soon as you are no longer useful to your own desires. Do you know why? Because constantly reacting to external stimuli makes you predictable, and everything that is predictable becomes a tool. People, circumstances, even your own unexamined impulses start to use you as an emotional emergency button. They press it when they want attention, relief, validation, or just to pull you into their drama, and then put you back on the shelf. But you don't realize this because you are trapped in an illusion that by being present for every external demand, you will finally find inner peace. But it doesn't work that way. The Stoics spoke about assent, the conscious choice to agree or disagree with an impression. This is your power. This is your psychic energy. Every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a part of that energy. The question is, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you are wasting this precious resource. When you defend yourself against a criticism that didn't even deserve attention, when you respond to a provocation just to prove you are right, when you engage in useless discussions, when you try to please those who do not value your inner peace, you are spending your inner strength on what does not nourish you. And Seneca was clear. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The more you resist what you cannot control, the more you bind yourself. People who live emotionally drained are not weak. They are simply misdirected. And do you know what happens to someone who lives exhausted? They become vulnerable. And when you are vulnerable, you become easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally needy people can sense this. They notice that you do not know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to solve the world, and they take advantage of it. A healthy mind, according to Stoicism, is one that knows how to keep its energy focused on what is within its sphere of influence. This means knowing how to say no without guilt, knowing how to remain silent without feeling cowardly, knowing how to observe before acting, because true power is not in reacting, it is in choosing when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses and differentiate them from external events. How many times have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? How many times have you spent hours ruminating on what you should have said, or trying to understand why someone treated you poorly? This is energy being drained without return. You are keeping alive emotional ghosts that should have died long ago, and feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on engaging with the uncontrollable. Your attention is like a force field. When well guarded, it creates presence. You enter a room and command respect without saying a word. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world has no mercy for those who give in easily. Therefore, start observing your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that is where you need to work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to be sovereign over yourself. And here comes one of the greatest revelations of Stoicism. When you conserve your energy, you break the projections that others place upon you. And that bothers a lot, because now we are entering a territory of silent transformation. In the next part, we will explore how external pressures feed off your reactions, and why your unshakable inner peace completely disarms these games. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who have always drained you without you realizing it. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You think you are in control, you believe your reactions are conscious choices, but the truth is deeper. Most of your emotional responses are conditioned, and those who understand this manipulate you easily, not with threats, but by simply triggering the buttons you've left exposed, and you react, always. The Stoics understood the power of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's about anticipating challenges, not to dread them, but to mentally prepare and realize that external events cannot harm your inner core. But there is another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project their expectations onto you, you also become the receptacle for these images. And the more emotionally reactive you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. You know that friend who only reaches out when they are in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day? That person who praises you, but only as long as you are useful to them? None of this is by chance. They are not relating to you. They are relating to the idea of you, to the role you agree to play. And why do you agree? Because you are afraid of disappointing, afraid of not being loved, afraid of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen in shouting. It happens in the silence of expectation. When you feel that you owe something to the other, when you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it destroys you inside. And here is the central point. The manipulator doesn't need to control you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing your attention instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls, and this leaves people unsettled because they no longer know who you are. And worse, now they are forced to look at themselves, and not everyone is prepared for that. Your inner peace is a threat because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The calm you offer reveals the internal noise they don't want to hear. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Seneca also taught, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." When you withdraw your craving for external validation, when you stop feeding the cycle of reaction, the other's shadow begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an emotional escape. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting your inner peace? Are you ready to endure the silence that comes after the rupture? Because it is precisely in that silence that a new kind of power is born, and that is what we will talk about now. In the next part, you will understand why conscious detachment can be the most devastating weapon for your own freedom and how it completely changes the dynamic between you and the world. The modern world is noisy. Everyone wants to be heard, wants to respond quickly, wants to win pointless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there is a power that few know and even fewer master, the power of selective engagement. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that is not absence, but amplified presence. The Stoics saw moments of withdrawal not as a void, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe, and by observing, you see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Emotional repetitions, manipulation games, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who thrive on your reactions. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When you don't explain yourself? When you simply disappear from their emotional radar? It's not because they miss you, it's because your silence takes away their narrative control. While you speak, you are still in the game, but when you are silent, you change the rules, and that unbalances anyone who thrives on your reaction. True silence is not the absence of voice, it is mastery over one's own attention. It is the refusal to be dragged down by someone else's emotions. It is the conscious choice not to engage in battles that are not worth your inner wear. Epictetus said that true freedom comes from understanding what is within your power and what is not. This requires distancing because only in silence can you listen to yourself without the world's interference. But don't be fooled. This selective engagement has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, arrogant. But all of this is a reaction from those who never wanted to deal with your depth, only with your utility. And here is the hard truth. The more you mature, the more selective you become with your words and your attention. Because you understand that each interaction is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your inner peace. Sometimes silence is not retreat. It is sovereignty. It is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces the other to deal with their own thoughts, with their own internal noise. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could reveal. You don't need to explain your absence. It explains itself. And those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your imbalance to maintain their own control. But the most powerful silence is not the one that disturbs the other. It is the silence that reconstructs you from within, the silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It is in this internal space, free from others' demands, that you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with your essence. And this is precisely what we will talk about in the next part. Because it's not enough to just cut out external noise. You need to relearn how to use your attention consciously, to choose where it goes, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never be wasted. It's time to learn to be selective with your own soul. It's no use understanding all of this intellectually if in practice you continue saying yes when you mean no, responding to messages that bother you, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that only exist out of inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability, or more accurately, conscious selective engagement, is not about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason that compromises your inner peace. It's about taking control of your own attention, your own time, your own peace. And this starts with small actions, not responding immediately, breathing before reacting, leaving a discussion before being dragged into chaos, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I won't get involved. But here's the most important part. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone but yourself, and this, for many people, is unforgivable. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, you take away the other person's power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. Marcus Aurelius understood that every process of self-mastery goes through a kind of isolation. not a depressive isolation, but a sacred isolation, a time of inner retreat, where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference, where you rebuild your identity, not based on the gaze of others, but from your own center. Want to know a good thermometer for your evolution? Observe who starts to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Observe who accuses you of having changed when you finally start to protect yourself. These are not signs that you are wrong. They are proof that you have begun to free yourself. Being selective is uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilty. You will think you are being selfish. You will hear that you are being too harsh. But this is part of the deconstruction process. You have spent your life being conditioned to put yourself second. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you, but in everyone who benefited from your old version. Conscious selective engagement is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you are reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin to be respected, even if it's by few. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence, because your emotional absence will expose wounds they do not want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. And it is at this moment that the rupture comes. And with the rupture comes the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you are losing something, when in fact you are just freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the distancing? What is born from the silence? In this final reflection, we talk about the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you did the right thing, if you are being too harsh, if you are losing people who liked you. But gradually this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. And then comes solitude. But not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own. The solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close.